5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to Japan. I wanted to say welcome to Suzuka Circuit, but we're actually in downtown Nagoya in one hotel room all together. I say we. I'm joined by BBC 5 Live's lead commentator Harry Benjamin and Neom McLaren Formula E racing team driver. Oh, feels good to say that. It's Sam Bird.
Good evening.
So welcome to Nagoya. Slightly different, not what I was planning.
No, I don't think any of us were quite planning. So we were always going to be staying in Nagoya and travelling to the circuit every day. But we've had travelling to the circuit has been a day.
It's been an eventful 48 hours. To
Welcome
say
back to the 5 Live team,
least.
Sam.
Yeah, absolutely.
But people will be thinking, well, yes, guys, you've travelled to the other side of the world. You're going to watch Formula One at Suzuka Circuit. It's a bit of a journey if you're setting off from the United Kingdom. But today, well, actually the last, as you say, 48 hours have been otherworldly, shall we say. It has been an adventure. I wouldn't have wanted to do it with anybody else, I have to say.
It's been very planes, trains and automobiles, hasn't it? If you guys can imagine that's what us four, including our producer Patrick, that's what we've been doing. I mean, it's our little version.
I have laughed a lot, which I think is...
There's no one I would have rather gone through this experience with than Sam Bird, Rosanna Tennant and Paddy Whiteside.
If you could have written a script, we've just followed our lines, haven't we, really? So here we are. Well, let's reflect, I guess, on why we're in Japan. Obviously, we love racing in Japan.
There's Formula One. Oh,
yeah, there's
great.
Formula One. Yeah, it's not a travel show. It's not a travel podcast. Do not adjust your sets. Of course, Formula One has been coming here for many a year. The fans, we were at the circuit today. We did actually make it there. The fans are already out in force Thursday afternoon, and we see wonderful creations. We see amazing hats and race helmets with DRS wings on it. They embrace Formula One, the Japanese, don't they, Sam?
Yeah, they're absolutely incredible. And a little snapshot of that was 5 minutes ago in the lift. There was a Japanese lady in the lift, and she had all AlphaTauri gear on, but she also had a McLaren hat. These fans over here, they don't just support one team or one driver, but they just support the sport. They love it. They've got all the merchandise. They even create their own merchandise, don't they, with these crazy DRS hats and things like that. So it's a very special place to come and enjoy a motor race.
The best thing is they've got some skin in the game now with Yuki Tsunoda, as you say, driving for AlphaTauri. So that sort of explains the kit choice from this particular lady you met in the lift, Sam. Probably another anecdote there. But we are so spoilt to have a Japanese driver because I think that really adds to the energy at Suzuka.
Yeah, there were so many years where we didn't have one, and I think it probably did take away. But as Sam alludes to, they're not just fans of the Japanese drivers; they are fans of every single one out there. But it does help having Yuki on board. Also Honda as well. I know they've sort of been 1 foot in, 1 foot out over the last couple of years. But as the power unit suppliers for Red Bull and AlphaTauri, and they are continuing. Of course, they'll be joining Aston Martin with the new regulations 2026. So they really do have a big affinity with Honda. I think Suzuka used to be, or was built to be, the Honda test track. So it's got such an affinity with Formula One in general. But with Tsunoda in the game, hopefully he'll be able to actually start this race and surpass one lap, because the last couple haven't been that great.
Yeah, terrible outings for him in the last two races. Monza, he pulled up on the formation lap and, of course, didn't finish the Singapore Grand Prix either. Did he? Yes.
Yeah, Perez kind of took him out.
Yes.
In turn 3 or 4, I think it was, on lap 1.
Yeah, and Perez had some more interactions, shall we say, with other drivers, Alex Albon being the other one, coming a cropper on that. But in terms of the drivers, the fans love it, but the drivers love it too. Why is it such a great drivers' track?
Because it's old school. It's a throwback. The modern circuits, you look at your Abu Dhabis of the world and places like that, they've got so much runoff. There's no pushing to the limit and then, you're off in the gravel or you're in the wall. It's you've got all the runoff in the world. Make mistakes, it doesn't really matter. Go on, okay, the lap's done, but the car's fine. Here, you go off at 130R, it's big problems. You go off in the middle sector at the high speed 90-degree right-handers, you're off and you're in the tyre barrier. There's no room for error, yet you've got to be so committed in order to get the lap time out of the car.
Yeah, it's going to be so great seeing the cars on track again. I haven't been here for a few years, so it's so nice to be back trackside for the Japanese Grand Prix. But as we come into this weekend, Champagne on ice still for the Drivers' Championship to be sealed by, we expect, Max Verstappen. He will have to wait until at least Qatar to take that one. But in terms of the Constructors' Championship, we thought we might get that in Singapore, but of course we had this anomaly, are we going to call it, weekend for Red Bull. So they could now seal it this weekend. But they're going to need a response, and they obviously need to outscore Mercedes by a point. Mercedes currently occupying second place in the standings at the moment. Can they respond? I mean, what was last weekend about in Singapore? What was going on there? Is this the demise of Red Bull?
Well, I'm not sure it's quite the demise. I think there's a couple of things at play. Red Bull, I don't think, have been completely forthcoming in terms of sort of saying publicly, at least, what the exact issues were. There's a lot of talk about the new technical directive that was brought in pre-Singapore to tackle the flexi wing issue on the front wing and the rear wing, being able to twist and distort while they're going round on track.
Tech Directive 18.
Thank you very much. They have said, Christian Horner and the team have said that is not the reason why. And I think what the closest we can get to an actual reason is why they had a massive drop off in pace in Singapore is because Singapore is so bumpy and they run the car so low. I think that was the issue. And so they had to raise the ride height slightly. So they couldn't run it as low as they normally do, which, of course, you run it lower, generates more downforce, you get more grip, simple as. And having to raise it slightly to deal with the bumps meant that they couldn't get their tyres in the working window, so struggling to get heat into them, and the rear just lost all kinds of grip. We saw Perez spinning round in turn 2 in qualifying as well, and Verstappen, I don't think we've seen him fight the Red Bull as hard as he had to do in Singapore. So I think that is as close to the crux of the issues we can get. But of course, we come here, Sam, to Japan. It should be back to business as usual.
It'll be smooth as a billiard table. It's not just the downforce that affected them with raising the ride height. It's also the centre of gravity height. So a bit like an SUV versus a sports car. An SUV cannot corner as well as a sports car because a sports car is lower to the ground. The moment you start raising a single-seater car up into the sky, you lose performance, you lose mid-corner speed, you lose traction, you lose everything because it's like the car's on stilts and it's wallowing around. So if they were raising the car, then yes, they're going to basically be taking performance out of the car. And that shouldn't be the issue here.
Yeah, difficult weekend for Red Bull in Singapore, starting outside the top 10, both drivers, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. And we spoke about it over the Singapore Grand Prix weekend. You sort of think when Max has a bit of a dud weekend, that's Checo's chance to rise to the top, but he couldn't either. Started from P13. They managed to make up a few places here and there. Pretty good event for Max in the end, but they need a response this weekend. So let's hear how Max Verstappen is feeling after that anomaly of a weekend.
It felt very nice on the simulator, and normally that's a good indication when everything comes quite easy. So yeah, I hope, of course, that it's going to be exactly the same in real life.
Now, we had George come in here and he said Lando was one of his picks for a favourite for this weekend. Are McLaren on your radar for this weekend in terms of high speed?
Honestly, what they have done this year is quite impressive, from where they started to where they are now. So I for sure expect them to be strong, but of course I hope to be ahead.
Well, look, that was Max Verstappen talking ahead of this weekend. He doesn't think the performance they saw a few days ago in Singapore is going to be carried over to this weekend. But how much does it derail you, Sam? Because they were on this incredible winning streak, Max, of course, in particular. Does it sort of upset the apple cart a little bit?
No, for Max Verstappen, with where he's at right now, he won't lose a wink of sleep over what happened in Singapore. The guy's just won 10 in a row. Like unprecedented, never seen before kind of records. And okay, it's come to an end, but the championship is pretty much in his pocket. And he knew that this day was going to come. He was going to not win one Grand Prix, and that's happened now. So it's almost like the monkey's off his back. He can just go back to winning more races. And if you ask me, that's exactly what will happen. On the other side of things, you've got George Russell, who has been driving really well. He's been outperforming and outpacing his world-class teammate in Lewis many times this season, but he's just thrown away a podium on the last lap of a race. He's going to feel like he needs to do something. Max doesn't need to do something. He's just going to drive his normal way. There's no pressure on him. But I think there might be a little bit of pressure on George, not necessarily from the team, but from himself to deliver.
Yeah, that was such a weird chain of events. Lando Norris brushing the wall on that last lap, George then going full tilt into it and losing a podium. Could have even been a win potentially. Who knows? We were all so excited about who was going to win the Singapore Grand Prix. Obviously, we'll talk about the winner, Carlos Sainz, in a little bit. But George Russell, he was saying today, that actually a lead engineer at the team got in touch with him after the race and said, don't beat yourself up. You're only in that position because the weekend had been going so well. And let's face it, Mercedes have had a torrid time of late. So to be right up there, being bold, being aggressive with that strategy, that's a positive that George can take away.
Yeah, for sure. And when they're all being dangled that carrot of this could be the one and only chance to get a race win this season, you're going to put it all on the line. And I suppose he did and paid the price for that, but he can't say he didn't try everything to get past Lando. And would he have even been able to get past Carlos Sainz? If he could get past Lando, probably, but we'll never know. Sam, have you ever had in your racing career a moment where, it could have been a great result and you have had a collision? But how have you personally...
How many times?
How have you personally
We're going to bring this up, Harry.
Because,
Do you know what?
Because George said
but
on the radio, he was like, what am I, a rookie?
It's really difficult. The walk back to the team after you've made a mistake. I did it in Mexico, actually, in Formula E a few years ago. I was in second, and then I just braked slightly offline on the second to last lap. And there were loads of marbles. The track was breaking up and I slid into the wall, and that was the end of my race. The walk back to the team to see everybody just so disappointed.
Helmet on, I imagine.
Yeah, helmet on, of course, helmet on. I'd given it everything. I was mortified for myself. I was mortified for the team. All that effort, going out to a different continent and to have that disappointment, it's awful. Now, the team were great. The team said, look, don't worry. You were driving really well. You were right up there. You were fighting for a podium or a win. All weekend you were flying, but it doesn't help me. I've still got to face my own inner demons, and I've got to face the fact that I've just put it in a wall and thrown away 18 points potentially for myself and for the race team. So it's nice that the engineers, contact him and do that, and I had the same. However, there's still that inner demon in your own head that's saying, I've got to go out and deliver next time. So that is that extra little bit of pressure. And I felt a little bit of extra pressure to perform the next time out. And it's a dangerous place to be in your own head, because then you might over try. And that's when things could spiral out of control. However, George's top driver. He won't do what I did.
Sorry to make you relive that.
PTSD for Sam, not very kind.
Off to the Priory.
Oh, not after the day we've had, Harry. You're just rubbing salt into the wounds. Well, you're right, though. The Mercedes team as a group, they lost points to Ferrari, 24 points separating Mercedes and Ferrari. Now Merck still hanging on to second in the constructors. Let's hear how George is feeling then after that incident in Singapore. Has he put it behind him? How is he feeling ahead of Japan?
It's been pretty good, to be honest. It'll probably stay with me for 24 hours, but I think in any moment of disappointment or failure or whatever you want to call it, you need to take the positives away. I had a nice phone call from one of the chief engineers basically saying, George, the only reason we had a chance of victory this weekend was because of the amazing job you did the whole weekend. These things happen. We're pushing ourselves above and beyond. We went all in for the win, and a street circuit bites when you make a mistake by 1 or 2 centimeters. So I'm not going to let it affect me. It's history. Looking forward now to the rest of the year.
And obviously, as you say, you'll be racing again in a few days' time. What do you think your prospects are for this weekend? Will this suit the Mercedes for this weekend, do you think?
I think we definitely got a good chance on Sunday. I think Ferrari will be quick again on quality performance. I think Lando's potentially one of the favourites for this weekend with their high-speed performance at the McLaren. But all the question marks are on Red Bull.
So George Russell looking for a bounce back this weekend in Japan. His teammate obviously scooping up a podium while George was in the wall. Where's Lewis at the moment, Sam?
I think Lewis's race was actually just as decent, if not maybe more decent than George's. But it would be difficult to see that. The first lap he took to the escape road and effectively overtook 2 cars illegally, which he then had to give back, which put him out of position with regards to the pace that he had in the car. And he spent all race then behind his teammate, because they're very, very close on pace. It was difficult to overtake. The pit stops and the safety cars, they didn't really work for him because people were double stacking. So actually he had really strong pace, especially the second phase on the mediums towards the end of the race. He was quicker than George. He caught George up, but then the tyres overheated and he couldn't do anything. So I think Lewis is driving at top level right now.
He says he's just got to perfect the qualifying, doesn't he? So who knows? Let's watch this space on Saturday. We are going to take a short break and then we will talk about the team that put an end to that winning streak of Red Bull and Max Verstappen. So after the incredible dominance of Red Bull and Max Verstappen, it was Ferrari. Feels like 1988 all over again, but it was Ferrari stopping the dominant team in their tracks, and it was Carlos Sainz. Anyone had his card marked? Was it Charles Leclerc? People were expecting to do that, not Carlos.
I actually think I predicted a Sainz win
You
last
did.
week. I think off the back of Monza, the confidence is there. Ferrari finding pace on two very different styles of track as well. Certainly raised an eyebrow. A first win for Fred Vasseur, the team principal, which we always said, when do we judge Fred coming in as boss of Ferrari? You've got to give him at least half a season. Well, we're just a little bit beyond that now. And what's he delivered? A race win for Ferrari and stopping Red Bull's run. I think it was a massively impressive weekend. We delved into it last week, but a really clever move from Sainz as well with the old DRS tactic. And he is riding high. And I think they're going to have confidence this weekend. I don't think they're going to be battling with the likes. I think Red Bull are going to be 20 seconds down the road, but I think Ferrari are certainly going to be maybe even the second best team right there with both cars. Leclerc needs to find something now, ironically, because Sainz has figured out a way that he can now hit the ground running in FP1, and that's all he needs, because before he always felt like he was playing catch up. But he somehow managed to sit down, figure out how he can get the most out of the car straight away from FP1. And Leclerc is now sitting there kind of scratching his head.
We're going to get into the driver dynamic at Ferrari and who's dealing with that car better out of Carlos and Charles. We're going to hear from Carlos Sainz now, our most recent race winner, and let's hear how he and the team celebrated.
I can tell you I had fun and with the whole team, mechanics, engineers. It was a night to celebrate. It was a short night because we finished at the track at 2 a.m. from the debrief and everything, so it's not like you got a lot of time to go out, but we definitely had tons of fun, and it was great to see the team in good form and enjoying their day after what's been, not gonna hide, a difficult year, a year that it's been obviously tough for everyone, and to give them a good reason to celebrate was a good moment.
Such a strong run of form for you. What do you put that down to personally? Was it a good summer break? Is it the car just moving a little bit towards you?
No, just putting things together. It's not, honestly, I don't feel like the car has come anywhere near what I want or what I like, apart from obviously working on setup tweaks and things that could help me and my own driving, what I want from the car. But the car is still a tricky car to drive. It's still a car that it hasn't given us an easy time this year. We will, I think, as soon as we go back to windy situations, long corners, I think we will still struggle a bit. But it's a car that in any given day can make a pole position now and then, like we saw in Baku with Charles, Monaco, Nili, and Singapore and Monza, and we can still give us some good moments that I'm willing to try and get again.
So obviously confidence is high with Carlos right now. Something has happened in the summer break. What is going on then when it comes to the better driver at Ferrari? You're talking about confidence. Are we going to see conflict in the coming races?
I actually think that there's already a little bit of need and a little bit of conflict within Ferrari. It's been Charles Leclerc's team for an awfully long time. Carlos Sainz has come in and tried to stamp his authority, and only until very, very recently has he ever looked like having the upper hand on Charles Leclerc on a regular basis. There might be a flash in the pan moment, but normally over the course of a weekend, Charles Leclerc has had the edge. That's not been the case recently. The last two weekends, Monza was questionable, but definitely Singapore, he absolutely had the upper hand on Charles Leclerc. And it's interesting because it's a really interesting time right now for Carlos Sainz. We're speaking about him potentially going off to Audi to be their kind of front man, their number one driver, which is something that Ferrari simply can't give him. They can't say, Carlos, you're our number one, because Charles Leclerc's there. So what's he going to do? Is he going to stay at Ferrari, or is he off to Audi in a couple of years' time? I think it's a really interesting time, but he's definitely putting himself in the best possible shop window to say to Ferrari, look, I can lead this team as well as Charles. Or he's saying to Audi, give me that seat and pay me a load of money, I'll be your number one.
I think the Audi seat is there for Carlos if he wants it, but he very much wants to stay at Ferrari. And Leclerc has been the golden boy, as you say, is the Ferrari man. But they've been kind of savvy and they haven't publicly labelled 1 and 2, even though we've all just assumed Leclerc. And on average, the numbers don't lie, Leclerc has been just over a tenth and a half quicker throughout their time together. But in the summer break, Sainz sat down with his engineers and was just trying to figure out a reason as to how he can understand this car better, because Sainz has been probably the more consistent driver. He can always deliver a 5th place or a 4th if the car's not quite there. But whereas Leclerc has the standout results, he can get that win, that pole position,
Well,
but then he'll throw it away if it's unstable.
Yeah, exactly. I think Charles will always push the car to 100%, even in the races, and he will not accept anything less than a win or a podium. Whereas Carlos is probably slightly more methodical and will understand today a 5th is the best that I can do, so I'm just going to aim for that. Whereas we've seen many times, the one that stands out in my head was a couple of years ago at Paul Ricard, where Charles needlessly threw it in the barrier in Scene. And it was unnecessary. And there's been quite a few moments like that where he's pushing so hard, extracting all of his talent, but then mistakes can creep in when you do that.
But are we slightly getting a Red Bull situation? We've got Charles, who prefers an oversteery car, and he's got an understeery car to deal with, and Carlos obviously can get on with that. Is it a bit Max Verstappen and Checo Perez? And so we're going to get this sort of divergence, and Charles either got to drive with what he's given and deal with it, rather than sort of trying to reach for something different. I don't know. I feel like the car's going more towards Carlos, and therefore, does that mean the team goes more towards Carlos?
I right now, Ferrari have done a pretty good job of keeping it fair, I think it's fair to say. And let's not forget, last time around, Leclerc played the team game, massively so. You know, Carlos did the job
but he knew
in
that.
qualifying.
Yeah, he didn't
which meant
qualify
Leclerc had to play the team game. But we have seen on some occasions, you know, I saw people bringing up Carlos's first win in Silverstone and how Leclerc was leading, and then on the safety car restart, but Sainz had fresher rubber, and they wanted Sainz to kind of fall back a few paces to after at the safety car restart to give Leclerc a fighting chance. But Sainz said, "Come on, guys, you can't leave me hanging here. I'm quicker. I've got to fight.
And
Otherwise,
I'm
going to get overtaken." Exactly. So you know, Sainz then again with his engineering mind thinking, how you know that I'm going to be the loser here if anything happens, but for the grand scheme of things in the team, we could well find ourselves a race win here, and of course they did in his first. I think Japan will be a real tell to see where they are form wise, and if Sainz can continue his trend of hitting FP1 on the ground. I mean, even when he had to miss FP1 in Zandvoort for Robert Schwartzman coming in, he still hit the ground in FP2, and he was the quicker of the car, and he had a good result there, the best that he could probably get out of the Ferrari. There's something going on at Ferrari right now, I think, and Sainz is proving to be a problem for Charles Leclerc, who equally is questioning his own future, whether that be at Ferrari or not.
But for once, it's a good problem for Ferrari. We've spoken so many times about bad strategy calls or them making mistakes or not being quick enough. Their problem now is they've got 2 guys delivering. That's a good place to be.
I'd say they've probably got one
for
of the
Ferrari,
best lineups.
That's a good place to be right now. They've got a pretty quick car. It's not the quickest out there, but they've found some speed. Both drivers are delivering. Nice problem for Fred and his team to have.
But of course, you're only as good as your last race. I would say Carlos was outperforming his pit wall, given they didn't really know what he was up to in Singapore. So fingers crossed the strategy calls all go right this weekend in Japan for Ferrari. As you say, a good position potentially to be in for them with Charles and Carlos. So let's talk drivers market, because it continues to rumble on. While we have Liam Lawson still on the grid, replacing Daniel Ricciardo while his hand mends, it's going to be a topic of conversation until we know who is where. So who's going where? Come on, give me some ideas.
I love this game.
Fill the seats. Well, that's the name.
Walking around Suzuka today, it was quite interesting. There's flags everywhere with all the drivers' faces on the front of the team. And of course, AlphaTauri have 3 flags with Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda, and Liam Lawson. Lawson is proving a problem, but a good problem for Red Bull and AlphaTauri to have, and has had P9 points, finishing only his third race, got into the top 10, out-qualified Max Verstappen, knocked him out by 7,000ths of a second. But I had a good race as well, worked his way back. So the two seats up for grabs here are, well, what's going on at AlphaTauri and who is going to be in that second seat that in Williams it's currently occupied by Logan Sargent, who is, I think we can agree, underperforming in that car compared to his teammate.
Well, you say that. I've had a really good chat today with Guillotin Diego, his race engineer.
Okay.
Now, we all forget, we all look at it and we all see the deficit to Alex Albon. Remember, Williams is a fairly underfunded team in comparison to a lot of other teams. They can't afford the upgrades to go on both cars all the time. Alexander Albon's car is quite a bit ahead and quite a lot more advanced than Logan Sargent's, but nobody knows that. The people
They do
watching
now.
at home, the people at home, yeah.
Sam Bird said on 5
No,
Live.
but
If you're a Chequered bag listener,
actually,
you will.
they're happier than we think with Logan right now. He's not doing a bad job. In Monza, actually, corrected pace. He was there or thereabouts with Alexander Albon. So
Okay.
I think that I can imagine he's going to have another year. So if you're speaking about the Williams seat, I think Logan Sargent is safe for another year.
And James Vowles kind of corroborated that story with me in Singapore last weekend when I spoke to him. I sat down and had a really good long chat, sort of interview with him. And he was almost saying it's our fault. We haven't looked after Logan enough. It's been a baptism of fire, which of course it always is going to be in Formula One as a rookie. But he was very honest that they'd not done a good enough job for him. So to your point, Sam, of him having another year in the seat, I wouldn't be surprised if that comes true.
I get that can obviously be a disparity, and Logan is not a bad peddler by any means. But I'm hearing rumours F2 champion from last year, Felipe Drugovich, is having chats with the team and has got money as well to help his side from Brazil. Equally, do Red Bull want to put a Liam Lawson in that seat if they can't place him at AlphaTauri, if they want to keep Daniel Ricciardo for next year alongside Yuki Tsunoda, which is sounding like they might go that way. Lawson has said this weekend he doesn't want to spend another year, ideally, as a reserve driver for Red Bull. So this is the conundrum you have. And I think when you look at it purely on paper, a team like Williams need points and they need to bag them quickly. Look at how tight that field is at the back. And they're doing a great job with Alex at the wheel of that. But imagine if they had another car that was able to score those points. And I know, it does come back to the underfunded things, but I think Lawson coming in has really sort of made an issue for rookies because he's got on the pace so quickly and scored points.
In a car that's actually quite difficult.
Exactly.
We've all been saying in the first half
Nick
of the year.
de Vries can do that, and he has way more experience than Liam Lawson.
Okay, so
Oscar
fill your
Piastri's
seats,
done a good
2024. Fill your seats.
I would like to see Tsunoda and Lawson at AlphaTauri. And
Because you believe in the young driver element.
because I believe that this is a wider picture now, is what is AlphaTauri standing for in the future? Hearing rumours again of a name change this year. Is it still a Red Bull junior team, or is it just another Red Bull team that they can put some drivers in? But that's the Ricciardo issue. But I believe I would put Tsunoda and Lawson going the young driver route development, and then I would probably give Felipe Drugovich a go in the Williams because I believe he should be rewarded for winning the F2 championship.
And obviously Logan did not.
No.
Sam,
Oh,
bold
right.
from
So
you.
you want my driver opinion, right? So I'm going slightly different, and in some people's eyes, this might be really controversial. What I would like to see,
Sam Bird in the Williams.
Sam Bird at McLaren. Sorry, Oscar. No, Oscar's just re-signed, which is great, by the way.
Yeah,
Oscar's just re-signed.
We're coming to
anyway,
that.
we'll get to that. I would like to see Liam Lawson at Aston Martin replacing Lance Stroll alongside
La La
Fernando
Land.
Alonso. I know I'm in La La. That's what you asked me what I'd like to see.
I
That's
totally
what
get
I'd
it.
like
That's
to
true.
see, because unfortunately right now there's too many world-class drivers and not enough seats. Now, if I'm looking up that grid, where is a decent seat where somebody is underperforming? And right now it is the Lance Stroll seat in comparison to Fernando Alonso. Imagine if Fernando had a hungry young Liam Lawson next to him. It would get more out of Fernando and it would get more points for the team.
So you
That's
think
all I'm
Liam
gonna
goes
say.
there, Felipe Drugovich, who's obviously the reserve at Aston, he doesn't go there?
No.
Or
would
Tsunoda
prefer-
with the Honda connection
Yeah.
coming in for Aston Martin in
Well, he's-
2026.
Keep keep Yuki at AlphaTauri.
Well, Yuki says he's totally sort of
Open
friends
to-
with Red Bull and Honda, and you think, mate, that can't last. You've got to
Yeah.
you got to choose.
Yeah.
You've got to go one
That's
or the
like
other.
divorced parents. Which side are you choosing?
If I could choose a big change, that would be my big change.
Okay.
And keep Daniel and Yuki at AlphaTauri.
And so
'Cause I don't
Perez
think
is still hanging on then.
Perez is still hanging on.
And you're
Because I think-
keeping Sargent at Williams.
Yes. I think giving him another year. I think Sergio, it works at Red Bull. I think they're happy with it. Look, they're going to wrap up the championship with 6-7 races to go.
And with a 1-2,
Like,
which they've never
with
done.
Yeah.
It's working. It doesn't really matter that he's half a second a lap slower than Max because they've got that much of a deficit.
Okay, the
right
music
now.
has stopped. The musical chairs has ended.
I just want to say, is
I
it a
liked
good
it.
omen for Liam Lawson this weekend that literally every corner shop where you can buy drinks and stuff is called Lawson here in
Japan,
Japan?
yeah.
So, good
The
omen.
writing was on the wall.
Literally.
Well, any other business. I mean, there's been a huge McLaren signing of late. Sandbird.
Samba to the Formula E team.
Absolutely.
And just a minor headline on Oscar Piastri really signing for
Yeah,
McLaren
minor
extending.
news. No, it's.
I heard
it's
it was
great.
50-50
And
between you two.
we haven't spoken anywhere near enough about McLaren's performance recently.
Do you get paid
No.
per word?
Oh, I knew this was coming. I knew that you two would bring this all weekend. I've had to be dealing with this. But they, Lando P2 in Singapore. That was his. What was it? His fourth podium in the last 6 races or something, or third podium in the last 6 races.
Checked notes.
He's had 3 P2s recently. One in Silverstone, Oscar and himself at Spa, and then here at last weekend at Singapore. This circuit could really suit them. So I think if anybody's going to take the fight to Red Bull and Ferrari, if Ferrari can hold on to their rear tyres, which I think might be quite tricky for them, I think McLaren will be there to get on the podium this weekend. That's my shoe-in.
I think George Russell saying that Ferrari are one to watch for qualifying. Lando as well is one to watch. Max Verstappen expecting McLaren to be they said he was impressive in Singapore, expecting them to be strong, but he hopes to be ahead. I think we've got some good battles on our hands.
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, to hark back to Singapore, and I was barking on about it on the commentary, this is what we kind of all been wanting to see. What would the fight would be like if Verstappen and Red Bull were not there? And we got a taster and saw it fully in Singapore. But even with normal service resumed for Red Bull, and let's not take anything away from what a spectacular season they've had and what's gone into that I know it's the battle for second, but that is such a good battle to watch with so many different teams, so many top class drivers. And with McLaren, I think it underlines, I'm so impressed with their rate of development and how quickly they bring an upgrade, and it has worked wonders. The last big one in Austria, and suddenly Lando's on the podium next race. Fantastic.
And also, yes, McLaren have signed Oscar up for another couple of years, but Oscar has also bought into McLaren, which shows you perhaps that he and Mark Webber, his manager, obviously believe in what they're doing in the turnaround. You know what it's like, Sam, don't you? You see the future, the potential.
I think that it's definitely the right place for Oscar. I think they've proven that they can take a young driver and develop him into a world-class racing driver. They've done that with Lando extremely well. They've done it before with Lewis Hamilton. It's in their DNA within the building in Woking. It is a team on the up compared to what they were at the beginning of the year.
Just
Why are we
checking,
laughing?
have you had
Why
your
are we
media training?
laughing?
Have you had it? Have you had it yet?
Maybe. Sophie Ogg's been training me extremely well.
Huge shout out to
But
Sophie.
I'm very excited to see what they can do this weekend.
Oh, good.
And
Well,
I
look,
hear the katsu curry and the hospitality here in Suzuka is lovely. That
Didn't
McLaren
get an invite
provide.
for that, did we, Harry?
No. Sam
No.
ditched us.
travel as a
Sorry.
team, eat alone.
Sorry.
Excellent. Well, look, this is all we've got time for because it has been a day. This week of a day, and I think it's time for us to wrap up the podcast. Looking forward to the Japanese Grand Prix. Loving every second with you both. Harry Benjamin, Sam Bird, Ivan Rosella Tennant will be live for every session. Can't believe we've still got a whole race weekend to go after today's marathon. We'll be live across the 5 Live network with all the usual reaction and analysis on the Chequered Flag podcast. The race starts at 6 a.m, so set your alarms early on Sunday morning, and hopefully you'll join us across the weekend. But from us, it's goodbye. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.
Come on, McLaren.